Welcome! You are listening to the CRM Success Show, where you will hear from CRM executives who have overseen some of the most interesting and complex CRM implementations. Your hosts, David Mosry and Kiro Whitey, will be bringing you real stories, real insight. Follow along on social media for updates on new episode releases, exclusive content, and much more. Enjoy the show and thanks.
Hey, so today we're talking with Brent Downey, from the Director of Revenue Technology at Pushpay. So welcome, Brent.
Thank you, guys. It's good to be with you.
Good to see you. So Brent, we always start our podcast, if you've listened before, which I know you're going to say every single episode you've listened to. So we always start with a very basic introduction to yourself, your background and ecosystem, and then a little bit about the company you are currently director at.
Yeah, I haven't listened to every episode, but I have listened to a number of them, and they're great. It's great to be with you guys. My Salesforce career is a long one. It feels weird to say about 16 years this year in 2026. Started like most did as an accidental admin in 2010. And fell in love with the ecosystem. I had no idea that there was actually an ecosystem around it. And as an accidental admin, it was great to have a community to be able to rely on and experience that. And so fell into the admin world, absolutely loved it. I moved to a couple different companies to be in that admin position. One company in particular, I was working with consultants to move or deploy Salesforce to our global sales team, and kind of got the consulting bug there, and thought that would be something that would be interesting at some point in my career. And after a couple of years of doing system administration, I thought, let's take the leap and let's do some consulting. So I did consulting for almost 10 years and have since moved to Pushpay, kind of back to the client side, where I'm running our internal group. We're called Revenue Technology. We manage Salesforce at the hub and slew of other products and integrations that service our go-to-market teams.
Fantastic. So you started out on the end user side, but still financial services, and then you moved also from there into manufacturing. So you got a bit of exposure to a couple of different industries. How did you end up at Shell Black? Was that 2015? I mean, like you said, it wasn't really much of an ecosystem. That would have been one of probably the first partners in with a niche at that time, maybe. So
yeah.
Was that through like word of mouth, or did you apply in the traditional sense, or?
Yeah, so I became a Salesforce MVP in 2012 or 2013.
Okay.
And that was through a blog, adminhero.com. And Shell was a MVP, I think, the year prior to my joining. So if you are familiar with the Shell Black Whiteboard series at all on YouTube, they're great. They're still up, and I would encourage you to take a look if you haven't seen them before. But I knew Shell through the MVP program, through his whiteboard series. And I actually met with him to talk about starting my own firm and just some of the perils of starting a business and things to be aware of and look out for. We met at Dreamforce 2015, I think it was, I think it was 2015. And the funny thing is, I left that conversation. I was like, well, that was more of a job interview than a conversation of starting your own business. So I ended up accepting an offer to work for him, and it was great. It was one of my fears with moving to consulting was the amount of travel that a lot of the bigger agencies require. And I had a young family. We just started our family. I didn't really want to be away from home that much. And Shell's organization is completely remote, minimal travel. So it really worked out. It worked out great. And then got great exposure to the consulting side of Salesforce. We were really heavy into financial services cloud. So when FSC came out, we already had a niche in financial services, particularly in wealth. And when FSC came out, we really saw the traction there. We pounced on that and became self-proclaimed FSC experts. and grew into that as well. So spent a ton of time documenting best practices, understanding the FSC platform, and then deploying those for that clientele.
Yeah, I'm in Dallas, as you know, and I was speaking to Maz ahead of this call. Great brand from a Texas perspective. I mean, people that I know have worked there, good people, high quality. So and usually when somebody's at a business for almost 10 years, things must have gone well. In the consulting, and as an SI, to be there that long. So I guess you had your desire for building a business within a comfort blanket of an existing kind of business as well. So best of both worlds.
Yeah, it was great because it was, Shellbox is a small enough firm that we all know each other from an employee perspective. And I really had the opportunity to help build and scale the organization along with Shell through that time. And so it was nice because I got the ability to kind of build a business without all of the intricacies of actually building a business.
Yeah, without the headache, you can say it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you actually touched on the MVP piece that I wanted to ask you about. Those that are in the ecosystem know about the MVP, what that kind of is and why it's there and what it is. But obviously 10 years ago, that was very different. I didn't realize it was back in 15, 16. I thought it was more like 18, 19 that you received that. So just give us, like, what was that like? Tell us, a little bit, like, did you know there was an MVP award? And I'm sure you blogged because it was your personal interest versus, hey, I'm doing it to get something out of it. But just tell us how that whole worked and when you found out, and do you think it's helped your career since and that type of stuff?
Yeah. If I recall correctly, I believe the MVP program, the first class of MVPs was 2012. And I was aware as I grew in the ecosystem that it was there, especially in that first year or two. There was a lot of communication on social platforms and in the community forums related to that first class. There was kind of a really big push from Salesforce. So in a way, it kind of became a goal to become an MVP. I wasn't really sure how that would happen or what that would look like. I felt like that was something to strive for, but I just didn't know how to do it. I started blogging really for myself at first because as I was working in this manufacturing company, I was a 6 months into my career as an admin, moved to this manufacturing company where we're deploying to 1,200, 1,300 users across the world. I'm still trying to learn the platform, let alone some of the nuances of translation workbench and multi-currency and all these other pieces of the product that don't get touched very often. And I was running into issues where I'm not finding documentation on how to leverage or solve these issues with these functions and features. And so as I developed solutions or found things that worked, I thought, well, if I'm having trouble finding this content, others must be too, because I'm sure I'm not the only one. And so that's where the blogging came from. And then it began to pick up steam. And I thought, well, maybe this is the mechanism, if I get the ability to become an MVP, maybe it's through Admin Hero. So that's really ultimately kind of where that came from. But, again, while it was a goal, it was never one of those things that I was doing explicitly to become an MVP. That just happened to be kind of the channel or the mode that I was able to get into the program. I think it's important for people to know that the MVP program is structured in such a way that it's really meant to reward those that are contributing meaningfully to the broader Salesforce community. And there are folks that have wrong motives trying to get into it from a career attainment perspective or, some of the benefits. And so there are some safeguards in place to ensure that those that are being awarded that particular title are excluded if they're doing it really for personal gains. I think it's a lot harder now to not have that desire for personal gain there and do things very intentionally to get into the program. When I got in, it was still very small. I think there was like 50, 75 MVPs. I think globally now, if you include those that are in the Hall of Fame, like myself, which were the old time retirees, there's well over 200. So,
Wow.
the scale is much different now as well, but great program, certainly helped my career tremendously, and gave me a platform that I'm super grateful for to be able to contribute to the community and engage in that way. It's been really pretty cool.
You mentioned the blog as well, which we were going to talk about, but since you mentioned it, and I did see you reposted yesterday the blog. So I was going to ask you, is it still there for people to read? And would you say it's still current? I know you reshared the 90 things you wish you knew as a Salesforce admin. What would be the one thing? Let's slightly off topic, we'll jump back on. But what would be the one thing you wish you knew as a Salesforce admin starting out your career?
Gosh, you're going to test my knowledge on that article, which I wrote like 8 years ago. I think if I was starting again, one piece of advice would be to dive into the deep end as quickly as possible. I almost feel a little bit challenged with that because the product has changed so much since I started. I happened to look at the release notes for the year that I started as an admin. Chatter had just been released. That was the big release in that summer 10. And the total release notes was like 152 pages. And now we're nearing like, what, 900 in a release. So there's just, as an admin, there's so much that you're expected to do now. And your knowledge is expected to be so vast. You just got to start, and you got to dive in and consume as much content as you can to make sure that you're running successful platforms.
Yeah, as quick as possible as well. We're going to come on to that in a second. Matt, you had a quick point you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I was just saying that this is, call it an epidemic across the entire IT industry, not just now. And just to make a point of how fast things are changing, I think it was last week, maybe the week before, they actually retired the AI associate cert.
Yeah,
less than 2 years after it was released. Like, which is incredible. And their whole focus is AI at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
It really is fascinating how quickly things are shifting, and obviously that's a combination in the Salesforce ecosystem of acquisitions, product integration, and of course the rise of AI and how quickly that's being adopted, not just with Agentforce, but just rise of AI tools for admins and developers and things like that integrate to Salesforce, and fundamentally kind of changing, I think, the expertise. You don't necessarily, I suppose, need to know all the specifics of Salesforce. I mean, Google did a really good job indexing help articles for a long time. AI is expanding on that, and now it can actually action for you. So as long as you've done, hopefully you're doing quick vetting of the results before you hit, yes, go build that. But certainly now the level of expertise has shifted a bit to knowing how to leverage the AI platforms. I still think you've got to have a good understanding of data model and best practices and things of that nature, because you'll very quickly ruin your system if you let AI just do all those pieces. But that knowledge transfer has begun for sure.
Well, if anyone's curious what the other 89 things are that they wish you knew, head over to your Admin Hero blog. I had a quick skim through, and Dare to Disagree is probably one that resonated with me the most, right? So, being hired for a reason, don't be afraid to speak up. So, love it. Good. So what about Pushpay? So you're 11 months into this role, the senior director, revenue technology. Let our listeners know what Pushpay do, because clues kind of in the name, payments, pushing payments. But I was when we had our brief, I didn't know exactly what you guys did. I heard the name and I was surprised in a way. It was like kind of cool. I never thought this product would be needed and serve a purpose, but when you think about it, it's a no-brainer. So let's tell our listeners, what does the business do exactly? And then the second part of that is what was the history around, a little bit like how you use Salesforce as well.
Yeah, sure. So the quick intro to Pushpay, we started as a payment processing organization focused on mission-based and nonprofit organizations. And we've quickly scaled over the last handful of years into more of a tech stack, a technology partner for nonprofits, and specifically in the faith-based market. So we've got 3 kind of core products now that make up that stack. The original product is what we call donor management, and that allows for whether they're supporters of your nonprofit or perhaps congregants at your church to be able to provide donations through a secure payment portal. We've got an acquisition that happened a number of years ago that makes up our what we call our CHMS, or our church management system. So this operates a lot like a CRM, but specifically for churches. And that integrates obviously pretty well with our donor management system. And then the third product is Resi, and that's a streaming product. So you can live stream events. We've got for-profit and nonprofits on that particular platform, but in the nonprofit or faith-based market in particular, you could think about streaming, a church service, for example, to different social channels, posting those to your websites, and Resi's the video streaming platform that does that. And of course, those all 3 work really well together, but you can use them independently as well. And then in terms of the use of Salesforce, Salesforce is like essential to running our business. It's at the core of our internal tech stack related to go-to-market. So we leverage that as our source of truth. We've got multiple products that sit on top of that to help augment, like any other organization has, DocuSign and other installed packages in that way. But it also integrates with our backend systems that support all of our products and turn on different features or whatever it would be needed to manage those products. It integrates to our billing system. We've got integrations to data lakes and Tableau and other things are employed there too. So really a critical application for us. Our challenge, which I know we'll dive more into, but right now the challenge is that the business has scaled and changed much faster than our technology has, and so we are in the process right now of really trying to clean up tech debt, identify and clean up tech debt, modernize business processes, and in a lot of cases get back to standard functionality where previously decisions have been made to do something completely custom. And for those in the ecosystem or using these products for a long time, that's not always the best way to leverage them. So we're kind of, in some ways, we're hamstrung in our ability to scale until those things are resolved.
So your title obviously is Director of Revenue Technology, but all of these other aspects, you own them too? I guess you would call it the customer servicing side or the onboarding side, the integrations with the other systems that are for billing, right? These are all post-sales type operations.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting relationship. Technically, I don't own some of the additional tooling from a cost center perspective. So for example, we do have Outreach and Gainsight, which are enablement tools for our sales and service teams. Those applications are owned by the respective teams, but my team owns the integration specifically, or in some cases, the onboarding, offboarding of team members too. So we work really closely with those other groups where that technology sits. There's actually I was thinking of this the other day, the only team that we don't directly interface within the organization is HR. But we interface with engineering and with product and all of the front end teams as well. And that's really because of just how the data moves and flows, the different integrations that we have there, and even enabling things like Agentforce in our product requires, working with products. So ownership of the tools depends a little bit, and depending on the ownership of the tools, we kind of determine who owns the specific touch points and integrations. Typically, it's going to be my team, RevTech, with Salesforce being at the hub. We completely own Salesforce specifically.
Even the non-revenue portions of Salesforce,
yeah,
you own that too, simply because you own the system.
Yeah, the concept of revenue technology is that the bulk of what Salesforce and these systems are set up to do is maintain the front end, sales and service side, which is go-to-market teams. So those teams specifically driving revenue for the organization.
All right, so take us back. So you've been with Pushpay for just about a year now, I believe.
Yep.
Have you passed the year mark yet?
It'll be April.
April.
Yeah.
Yeah, so another month or two.
Mhm.
So tell us how it was when you first started there, right? Obviously, you were coming at a shell back, right? So you're coming from
Correct.
the consulting side. You're
Mhm.
going to now client side. I don't even know if that's a term they use on the client side. Like,
I don't know either.
yeah.
Uh,
Right. So you go to the client side. Right. So tell us a little bit about that, right? So what did you inherit? How's your KT? How's your mandate like? Okay, what are your top priorities? How did you get up to
mhm.
speed? Right? 'Cause it's often like a fire hose.
Yeah, it was a lot. I think there was a number of challenges. Just the transition back to the client side was really interesting. The combination of work environments, for one. I was fully remote, moving to a hybrid schedule, so that by itself was interesting. And then when you're consulting, you do work with politics within organizations, but you typically operate more as a mediator in those instances. Whereas when you're W-2 actually working in the business, you tend to be in the middle of the political conversations. So, there's just some things moving back to client side that I had to readjust to from that perspective culturally. But from a position and kind of the mandate, the organization was well aware that the tooling needed quite extensive work. And so they were very clear from the very beginning that this was going to be a bit of an uphill battle. There's a lot of work to do, a lot of competing priorities. We still are moving the business forward with initiatives. And we operate as a shared service. So I've got all departments requesting work from us. We've got major initiatives from a business perspective that need to get done. And so managing those competing priorities is a bit more of a challenge in some ways than having competing priorities on the client side, because you can kind of manage capacity a little different on the consulting side, because when you're consulting, you can manage capacity a bit better, more intuitively, right? That's kind of part of the makeup of consulting. So I was appreciative of the fact that it was made known there was quite a bit of work to be done. Once you get boots on the ground, you start kind of peeling back the layers of the onion and you realize how much work there is to be done. So there's been moments where I've been pretty overwhelmed and trying to, sort out what a roadmap and a plan looks like. And that's, I think, been some of the more challenging work, is doing things in the right order, trying to make sure that we are, for current initiatives, that we're not adding to the tech debt, but we're actually taking the opportunity to go, how do we do this the right way? And how do we communicate to the business it's going to be extra time because we're going to do it the right way, as opposed to jury rigging things as the culture of the business has been. So that's been really the mandate. Let's come in and let's get this working as it needs to. And it's not just Salesforce. Some of the related tooling is also structured that way. And so that's, kind of the larger part of the issues. In terms of knowledge transfer, there was an extensive period. It was a full 90 days of planned activities, meet and greet key stakeholders, work with different departments to do shadowing, understanding key business processes, digging into the org itself, and really trying to understand what's in there, what can be deprecated, a lot of documentation review to determine what's up to date and what's not. So there was a pretty extensive amount of time there. I also executed a kind of an analysis of the team and the business as well, and had a deliverable as part of that onboarding process too. Do we have the right skill set on the team? What are the gaps or deficiencies that maybe need to get filled? Are there areas of work that business processes that are not working as it relates to our relationship to the business? So, for example, how are we getting new requests from the business, and is that working? Is prioritization actually working? Is the tool or tool set that we're using to manage our projects actually working? And in all of these areas, there were certain gaps that needed to be filled. So a lot of that went into an analysis of the team and the broader group of revenue technology, with some suggestions and outputs that ultimately, some of which got executed on their own, some of which we had to, or I had to begin to implement and roll out. So there was a lot to cover in that first 90 days.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, it sounds like they gave you the 90-day roadmap. Usually, someone coming in your level, they would tell you to figure out the 90-day roadmap and come back with us. Uh, I think that's really great. It sounds like whoever you're reporting to did like an absolute stellar job here. I'll also say that it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it sounds like he knew the answer to these questions he gave you, but he wanted you to figure it out on your own, um, and come back with the details, or I guess the nitty gritty, right? So if he's saying you figure out if our whatever you want to call it, our business request process is working, it sounds like he knew that it wasn't, and he's saying figure out if it is. In other words, figure out what's wrong with it.
I think there was some understanding that there were gaps in that and other processes. Whether or not there was a solution identified, or truly knowing if there was an issue, I think it was kind of an area of, here's a few things or areas of the business that you are now overseeing that might be an issue. So go either confirm that, because we know that it is, or validate that it isn't an issue so we can take it off the plate for consideration. So I do think that there was a general understanding of where some of the friction was within the business as it relates to revenue technology. And I identified some additional opportunities through that reporting that I felt like could be much better. And so made sure to include that. The nice thing is, I think, coming in with a fresh set of eyes and having a bit of that consulting perspective as well. I'm sure that the consulting side and mindset helped a lot, because I came in with that concept of being a consultant first, and let's just get a lay of the land. If I think about coming into a new organization as a consultant and we're revamping processes, we've got to understand what current state looks like. And then we've got to understand what levers we can begin to pull and build out a roadmap from there. So that experience on the consulting side helped a lot to come in to Pushpay and evaluate teams and systems and try to figure out, where do we have a starting point? What's some of the low-hanging fruit? How do we categorize these bigger rocks that need to get done? And out of that, ultimately, we'll begin to build a roadmap. But that perspective helped tremendously in doing this analysis.
Okay, awesome. So you got in there, you got your 90-day mandate, you did your investigation, you dug into tech debt, you evaluated your team, assumed you made some level of changes at the team level, but we don't need to dig into that. And then you put together a roadmap. So tell us about that process, right? So specifically of how you dealt with classifying what are my must fix ASAP issues versus this is the next year problem, or this is a 6 month out problem, or how much are we going to try to do an enhancement because I don't know, new product is coming on, maybe they bought Resi. Were you there when they bought Resi?
No, that
Oh,
was before me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So how do you put together that roadmap? And then a quick follow up to that is, okay, great. How do you then sell that to the wider team, particularly when you're dealing with conflicting interests on different business units?
Well, if I'm perfectly honest, I think we're still building the roadmap. At this point, I feel like enough work and context has been generated to rectify some of the areas of the business that needed to be fixed. So, for example, prioritization was a big issue that we were running into. It was extremely inefficient as we're working with each of the groups, talking about what
prioritization of what?
Just prioritization of work. So as a shared service, we've got multiple groups that are coming to my team to say, hey, in Salesforce, we need this, or we need to begin to deploy this new integration or this app, or here's a slew of bug fixes that are needed. as a team, we operate across all of the groups within the organization. And obviously we only have a certain amount of capacity to be able to execute all of the priorities of the work or of the business. And when you've got 5 or 6 groups coming to you with high priority items, how do you begin to prioritize those things? So the way that was being done previously was in silos. Groups were asking for things that maybe had overlap to other groups, but they were completely unaware of that overlap. We were doing a lot of the facilitation within my group to kind of pair those things up and gather appropriate requirements. And that was just creating a lot of inefficiencies and people talking past each other. And then the business units would get upset or have frustration when certain work would be prioritized for a different group. And there's really good reason for it, but their high priority item was not. And so we completely fundamentally changed that process of having a monthly prioritization meeting. Everyone hears what is on the table across the group. And what we've seen in that particular example in doing this is that there's so much intricacy and interplay between the groups that someone would raise an issue and go, oh, actually, that's really important for my group too, or we could benefit from that. I actually want to jump on that bandwagon and let's move that initiative forward instead of these other items that I was going to bring to the table, because that's going to be more impactful. So it's helped to identify where we've got really great areas of spend to be able to have maximum impact on the business. And it provides additional context across the business units that maybe aren't talking on a regular basis with what a potential roadmap could look like and where they can buy in. So prioritization was one of those things that we updated, and that was kind of low-hanging fruit in a way to be able to work that process through. And we did that with a number of items that I think help lay the foundation or recast the foundation for how we're going to operate as a group before we even get into building the roadmap and executing, against that roadmap. So now we're to the point where we've got a good operating model with the business. We've got major initiatives that have been identified across the business that all teams have buy-in on, that are really kind of taking priority. And then we're really focused in on the things that what are blocking sales, what are blocking customers. Those become high priority items in our day-to-day. And then what are the major initiative items that need kind of our full attention or a good chunk of our attention to move things forward. We're leveraging some partners to assist on some of the tech debt and some of the enhancements where maybe there's some skills gaps or we just need some expeditious configuration to get done in order to hit timelines and so forth.
So it sounds very Scrum-like or Agile-like, once a month meeting. So I get it's a little bit longer than a typical sprint, but still very sprint-like. Um, any issues with like people trying to bypass the process, mid-month request, somebody goes directly to developer because you're on vacation. Hey, can you sneak this in? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yep. I think one of the things with this role is good stakeholder management. You're always going to have folks that want things faster or that have changed their mind and now want to completely revamp something. We've had instances, as I'm sure most organizations have had, where we're very close to deployment and the business comes back and says, actually, we've completely revamped that process and here's a new set of requirements. Right. So you go back to the drawing board on those items. Where we've really had to, from a culture shift perspective, but part of my job has been to change some of the culture and the approach of what we've done in the past to which has gotten us to where we are today. We've got to stop doing those things. And so if you are going to change requirements or we've got mid-cycle changes, we might be able to accommodate those things, but there's going to be some give. So I can't add something new if we've already made commitments to priorities. So what are you pulling out of the current sprint to be able to replace that item or pull in a new item? Or in some cases, very kindly telling the business, no, sorry, we're not going to do that, or I can't do it in that time frame. We will put that into priority for next sprint or into our next prioritization meeting. So I think there's ways that you've got to be able to handle that. Saying no is one of those, but saying no with a why, because the business doesn't always understand the rationale, and that there's an order of operations and a way of developing software in these systems. And I think the why has been missing previously. So there was some contention, around this team always saying no, when the reality is it's a no, but we can do this, or no, and here's the rationale for it. So stakeholder management has become a real key component to what I'm doing to make sure that we're successful.
Yeah, sometimes stakeholders don't also understand system dependencies, right? We got to finish this integration first, and we got to build the case management, and then we can build this feature because there's interdependencies there. Last question on this subject. Did you tie your release cycles to the monthly meetings? So did you take like a monthly meeting, put together, okay, that's our next sprint or a sprint, and then that's going to be a release? Or did you take the meetings and you would say, okay, this is in this release, this is in that release, this is in that release, and have a regular release schedule, right? How did you kind of manage these monthly, let's call them steer code meetings, which I assume they were at the very senior level, meetings into a calendar of actual releases with deadlines?
Yeah, I think we're still refining this process a little bit, but the intent is a monthly meeting, and this is where we will build out the priority for the next month. We still operate, generally speaking, in 2-week sprints within my team, and we try to do weekly deployments. So as things become available within a 2-week sprint, if we can get them readied before a deployment date, we will, and tested and signed off on, and all of the specifics are confirmed. We'll try to deploy that before the end of the release cycle. Part of that, the reason for that is that we just have so much technical debt and friction that we figure if we can deploy fixes and functionality faster, then it unblocks the business, and in a lot of ways that reduces the need for us to support the business through our support ticketing, which has a insanely high volume right now as a result. So that's the general cadence: monthly prioritization, 2-week sprints, weekly deployments.
Nice. I want to come back to something we talked about prior to the recording, was the notion of running projects like a consulting engagement. Obviously, you spent nearly a decade in the SI world. Some of the stuff you mentioned would traditionally be in scope, out of scope kind of conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Discover, like you can align it. It's all the same, right?
Yeah.
And you talk a bit about that, but like the initial 90 days is like a discovery call, right? With a client, right? What do we want to achieve? What's realistic? What's our timelines? It's the same process. So how, and you've worked at an end user prior. That's where you started. We'll call it end user. That's the customer. You've worked for the customer before. So sometimes as a recruiter, we have SIs that won't hire from a customer if they've not worked at an SI before, vice versa. So, but to me, I mean, I know there's nuances. I'm not naive enough to know there's nuances, there's differences, right? It is a slightly different skill set, more so on the soft skills side than I think the actual technical day-to-day of the job. In your opinion, how much are you running the project and the teams the way you would the same when you were back at Shell Black in consulting? Like, is it on a percentage scale? Like, how much similarity is there between what you were doing?
My day today feels like 100%, because that's ultimately where we need to get the team. But I know that's not a true number, because it's still, there's a culture shift internally with stakeholders, with what the process looks like. And what now we are requiring or trying to get required as part of making a request. Then you're educating the team in a different set of process steps and expectation setting. They also have an element of stakeholder management that's involved in that as well. So I'd say realistically, running our projects, probably 50%, maybe a little bit less, of what a typical kind of consulting engagement structure would look like. But the hard part, or the part to remember, is that there's a systemic kind of cultural change that has to happen, and those tend to be a little bit slower in adoption. So as long as we're consistent in our approach to the business and continue to not make exceptions, I think that becomes much easier. But it takes time to adapt to new process too. So we're looking at what's working, what's not. Maybe a straight consulting approach doesn't work, but the concept does. So how do we adapt that to fit within the business itself? And so we're always in a process of revision and trying to make sure that it's as effective for the business as possible.
Makes sense. So briefly, we're going to talk a little bit about the team you inherited, not specifics of individuals or anything like that, but the idea of inheriting a team. How big was the team initially? Because I believe from memory it was a larger team than it is today initially, and there was a process there. So just kind of set the scene. How many? You don't need to mention specific partners or anything, but how many people? FTEs, contractors, vendors, etc. were you using, and what does that look like today?
Yeah, it was about a year ago. So this is February of 26 that we're recording, February-ish of 25. The team was approximately 20, 25 people. A good chunk of those were what we call support admins. So they were running some day-to-day mechanics of the system, doing reporting, data updates, working through tickets that were being submitted by end users. Handful of admins, project manager, developer. By the time I came on that same year in April, that was down to about 12. So a good swath of the team got cut. And the idea with that was that for Salesforce, a typical Salesforce org, we've got 300 some odd users, 350, 380 users. To have a team of 25 or whatever supporting them was just an extremely high number. What I don't think was understood at the time was that the business had built the system so complex that it was actually needed that number of people to support it. So again, into the process of modernization. So when I started, I believe there was a total of 12. We're down to 6. So right now I've got two admins. We are backfilling a couple of roles, or determining how to best get some additional capacity there. I've got a project manager, I've got a developer, and I do have an individual that works with kind of straddles marketing and revenue technology. So she operates as kind of product owner for the marketing tools, but she sits in my group. So interfaces with marketing and then brings a lot of those technical pieces back to my team. So 6 of us total, if you include me. A couple of open positions that we're looking to fill to help. I think the staffing probably right-sized. It just right-sized too quickly. And now we're at a point where we're really kind of keeping the lights on and not getting to more of the major initiatives. So we've got to get some additional capacity in order to help right-size the systems. And then I think, we're back into some form of alignment, but it happened relatively quickly. So that becomes a challenge as well. And
what about in terms of onshore, nearshore, offshore? How does that all look like? Is this all a local team in Colorado or Seattle? Colorado, right? I think.
Yeah, I'm in Colorado. Our company is based out of the Redmond, Washington area. So I've got folks that are in Redmond. I have a couple that are in our Colorado Springs office with me, and we have had some partners employed at various times, off and on, depending on different projects. We've got 2 engaged right now. Actually, technically, I guess we'll have 3 engaged for various projects that we've got going right now. So, that's kind of a mix. Onshore, all of it onshore. We're exploring nearshore, whether or not that will become thing for us. I think we're trying to make that determination. I think the larger question is, contract versus W-2, more specifically, and what types of flexibilities does that provide? Where do we see the team in the next 12 to 18 months? So trying to plan a little bit for the future, knowing that we have some immediate needs. And just like with what we're doing with the business in Salesforce, let's not do a Band-Aid today that's going to cause a problem tomorrow.
Yeah.
So trying to think a little bit further out as we're making some hiring decisions.
And obviously, some of that is driven by new projects that you have in mind, and less so keeping the lights on. But I think some of the stuff that you are looking forward to doing and doing more of. We're going to talk a little bit about Agentforce, right? So so walk us through Agentforce at Pushpay. What does that look like? What is kind of like the use case, and then I'll let Maz pick up on maybe some of the other areas of what went well, what was a challenge, what didn't, and so on. Yeah,
the first area that we've really employed Agentforce, and it's really the only application we've got right now, although we've got some potential thoughts of additional agents or even enhancements here, but I think it's a typical use case around help center customer service capacity. We've got a really great customer success team that works with our clients. And what we wanted to try to do was provide a better service experience in a couple of different ways. One was to provide more immediate answers to clients that were looking for simple responses or things that would be relatively easy for an agent or a bot to answer. We are also really wanting to retire some of our inbound customer service channels. So email to case becomes, pretty burdensome. It's a little bit of an older technology. And we feel like we can reduce cases overall by channeling our support through an agent. So that was really the intent, but we also wanted to make sure that we weren't putting up an AI wall between our customers and our service reps. And so we went through an intentional process to ensure that Agentforce is the entry point for service, but it is immediately able to connect you to a real person if you want that. And so that was one of our big goals. So we weren't looking at it from a headcount reduction perspective in CS. It was really about a customer experience and the ability to become more efficient with the folks that we have, while eventually getting to a point of retiring, some of our service-based functions, mechanical functions, right, like email to case.
What about so as you Maz, I'll pass on to you, but I think. Obviously, everyone in the ecosystem's heard of Agentforce. There's no way to not hear about it. Where did you start with determining use cases? Because I assume, given that this was something that probably was one of the first things on your to-do list when you joined, where do you start? Is it as simple as saying, okay, let's just trial it internally on internal-facing process enhancements, right? An FAQ, glorified chatbot. Is that where you start, or did you do a whiteboard session to determine, okay, what would we want to be automated and through a bot, through Agentforce versus, because that human touch, right?
Yeah. Well, this project actually was underway prior to my starting, so I came in right at the tail end. But if I was doing it again, and based on what I know, well, let me start with what I know. So from a project perspective, there was the intention to become much more efficient. The business felt like Agentforce was a good first step in identifying those efficiencies. I do know that there was our CS team has a great operations function, so they are really well in tune with the needs of that organization as well as the needs of the customer. They keep great records. They come up with fantastic ideas to make not only their work easier in Salesforce, but also help reduce friction for our customers where they might experience that within the platform. So they had a pretty extensive list of things that they wanted to accomplish. This was also being paired, though, with the deprecation of a knowledge base kind of search tool that sat on our on our help center. And so part of this was a cost-cutting measure with that specific tool in mind, and ideally getting some of the same benefits through Agentforce specifically at a fraction of that cost. So all of that was represented the driver. There were metrics that were put around it to kind of help understand the cost implication and the ROI. And there was a goal that was determined by the business. So it will be successful when these things are determined to have been met. I think we're pretty close to that. Our first round didn't quite accomplish everything that we wanted. It's been very successful, but it's not quite where we want it to be. So we are in kind of a phase 2 right now, working with a partner to get that more refined and dialed in, so that we have more confidence in the bot itself, or in the agent. I should use the right language. The agent.
It's still a new habit.
Yeah, when you've been in the ecosystem so long, those phrases keep rolling out the wrong way.
An agent is a bot. It's just a type. That's marketing brilliance, by the way. So how do you measure? Do you have like a formal measuring that you can measure? Okay, this is a good enough answer, or now I met the bar, I can roll it out.
There was a lot of internal testing around that, where we had folks that knew the content that was supposed to be surfaced very well, and we had a slew of prompts that we would just hammer at that agent and see what comes back. So we did have an understanding of what should be happening, or what we're anticipating happening, which I think was really helpful. Pulling in some, not outside resources to Pushpay, but pulling in some outside resources from that CX group, the customer experience group, to help with the testing as well, was really helpful, because other groups may not know the same terminology in the articles well enough to validate. And so you get a little bit of a different mix when you pull in those folks. So yeah, I think there was an idea of what should be expected and what we would determine success based on knowledge of what we're expecting to return or have returned.
So to rephrase, do you have formal test cases for the agent?
There were some formal test cases.
And
Yeah.
you'd have so you do treat it like very much like a traditional QA cycle with formal test cases, pass fail. Side question.
Yeah.
Like you guys clearly work with a more religious, right? User group, I would think. Do you adjust the chop for that kind of culture?
In terms of like how the bot responds, and
we mean the agent when we say bot, just to be clear.
Agent bot. Yes. See, I'm still yes. There is some training within the agent, I think, just to have, the friendly tone, specifically, and working with the types of organizations that we do. We just know that connections are really important. So we wanted the tone of the agent to be collaborative, as if they were talking to an actual person. We've named our bot, our agent, Jenny, which is short for generosity, which is one of our kind of big marketing and attributes, that we talk about a lot. So even just down to the naming, we tried to make it something that was familiar, but also played into our product and where our clients are. So we tried to create a persona that fit well with the organizations that we work with.
So Jenny with a G.
Jenny with a G.
Okay, cool.
Not Jenny from the block.
No, that's a different Jenny. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So what about the knowledge base? That you think Salesforce knowledge base? You're connecting to external.
No, that was a Salesforce knowledge base. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're not, or not yet, at least, trying to run through very specific user context or client context or customer context queries with this knowledge base. It's just a generic knowledge base, or you're dealing with the security of segmenting.
We've got some segmenting happening between products. So for example, right now, Jenny's not working with the Resi knowledge articles. That's a different phase that we'll be looking at deploying Jenny to, or for that product. But we also have some segmentation by product within those knowledge articles, it's important to make sure that we've got the right tagging for. We have found issues. Really, the issues were that we found related to the knowledge base are what you would expect, where the documentation just wasn't clear. It was not as robust as probably it needed to be. Phrasing was different. It was all internal language more so than the external language that our clients might use. So when you have an agent that's trying to make a decision on a knowledge article to pull back, you've got a conflict in language, for example, or terminology that's being used. And so there were times where we had knowledge articles for what was being asked for, but she wasn't finding it or returning it properly. So there was a lot of work to update the actual content of the knowledge articles to create more clarity and distinction between product names and different aspects of our product. We also have, on occasion, one of the challenges that we also run into is that we have clients, but our clients have clients. So you think about, we work with a church, for example. That church has folks that are using our product from an end user perspective. We're not servicing that end user, right? Our end user is in the middle. It's the church. So sometimes we run into instances where the church's end user is trying to get an answer from the bot, and the context that it's returning is from an administrator perspective, for example, of the product, and not actually returning a response that's helpful to the secondary end user. So trying to make more distinctions that way. Part of what we want to do in this next phase, which is on our list, Maz, is to make sure that they've got the agent has context of a user. Right now, it doesn't have context of the user, so it's very generic. But we want to be able to say, hey, you're an admin in the org. Here's what we know you can do from a permissions-based perspective, and so we're going to return this result to you. Or you're not an admin in the org. Let's not bother sending this particular set of instructions to you, but instead we'll return something that's more appropriate to your role. I think that'll help a lot in the user experience portion of the agent, and for our end users, our clients.
So talk to me about maintaining the human touch, right? Because that you said was really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said you can auto route to a human at any time. Like, do you wait for them to ask? Do you offer, hey, I'm gonna route you? Or do you say, would you like me to route you to a human? And then how do you deal with like the 24-hour thing? Do you really have staff 24 hours, or do you turn the chatbot off?
Yeah, I'll answer the last one first. We do turn it off. We do have
human
support
available, agents out.
Sorry. Well, so Agentforce itself would be available, but the direct to a human would be within business hours. But typically in that scenario, we will indicate a callback. So yeah, have someone call me back during business hours. That'll initiate a case in our system, and then we've got a team that first thing in the morning will go and call back and make sure that either the issue was resolved or will help to resolve the issue. We've been refining this process a little bit. We went in with the intention of it being a not an AI wall. I think some of the messaging and defaults that are placed into the agent are really critical. But what's the first thing when you open up Agentforce and that welcome message is displayed? You don't want that to feel cold, or in our case, we didn't want that to feel like there was a inability to get to a person. So we've been testing out different pieces of messaging to say, hey, if at any time you want to talk to someone, just ask me. And that's actually the first message that comes up, or the welcome message that comes up now, so that people feel like they can immediately get to a person. Whereas before it was a little bit buried, or you had to ask the question and see what would happen. So we do want to maintain that human touch. And then of course, the way that she responds, we wanted to make sure that it was very conversational, as Agentforce is out of the box, but also has a bit of the tone that you would have when you're working with one of our agents, on the phone or over email.
So, do you keep statistics on that? How many people immediately say human, please? Like right after the first message?
Probably. I don't have those, but I do have a team in the CX team has been looking at every single chat conversation since we've deployed, um, not only to refine the agent and our content, but also identify where we can make improvements like that. So I don't have those metrics, but I'm sure we've got some number around somewhere. We're on a first request they're asking.
What I think the importance of choice is key. I think as a consumer, whether you're buying something online or booking airfare, whatever, right? You want the choice of being able to speak to a human, or not have to speak to a human, right? Can I just get the answer as quick as possible? So I think that's really important, especially given the nature of what Pushpay do, right?
Mhm.
Your audience, what the causes are, and also probably the age range as well of who's going through the platform. So good stuff there. Last question on Agentforce, and we'll wrap. But Salesforce will tell you sky's the limit, of course, when it comes to Agentforce. If we're sat here in 12 months, having this conversation, checking in, what would you have liked to have achieved with Agentforce? Like, how far can this go for Pushpay as a business? What would be like the pinnacle end goal that Agentforce would accomplish?
The thing is that the agent's already accomplishing a lot for us. If we look at case deflection rates, they're really high, which is a big win. The overall satisfaction, I think, right now is a bit mixed, and that's what we're trying to get higher scores on when we look at general feedback from our clients. So, I think I don't even know if there's like a technical thing that we would try to accomplish right now with Agentforce that we're not getting. I think what would be really exciting is that people are actually excited to use the agent more so. And again, that's not because we want to remove the human component, but just that the agent is so helpful and easy to use to accomplish what I'm after, that becomes my default as a user. And then if I run into something more complex or have things that maybe I can't do from a permissions-based perspective that the agent can't award functionality to, then there's an escalation point to a person. I think to me that would be a big win. But there is still such hesitancy around AI and in the everyday applications. I think even just about I had to open a case with Salesforce this week, and using Agentforce to do that feels really clunky, and it takes multiple requests when I used to be able to just click a button and key in what I needed and submit the case. So, when I think about the different applications of the experience, to me, it's not so much what can the agent do, but what is the experience of the agent between me and the agent. And I think that's the area I would really love to see refinement and improvement.
That's good insight. You're using primarily Agentforce from a service capacity, which I know is where it's most commonly used. So it's not a organizational, specific reason. But I'm curious, and you might not have the answer. It could just be a yes or no, and we'll see as we close up now. But do you see Agentforce, for example, at Pushpay, being used outside of just purely service cases, the inquiries? Do you see a world where you might be able to leverage Agentforce for revenue generating activities, sales enablement, sales optimization, inbound leads, those types of things as well? Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. I've seen some use cases for that in the ecosystem and some applications of that. Where I struggle personally is still this concept that your data and your systems really have to be in alignment and have to be well tuned to be able to really leverage these. And I think that there's a concept that you can just kind of put AI on top of these things and they're going to fix the problems that are underlying in your systems or business process. And the reality is that the agent is probably going to exacerbate those problems or make them more noticeable.
Yeah.
And then because you're working with an agent that has only so much knowledge and autonomy, it's going to become an extremely frustrating process. And if you pigeonhole certain processes to use that agent, then you've got really frustrated users that you're actually creating more friction for them than you are creating helpfulness. So I think ultimately, while there's a great series of applications for agents, whether it's Agentforce or other tooling, the same concepts still apply. Good data model, good data hygiene, solid business processes, and you've got your systems are, they're in lockstep with the rest of the business, and they're efficient. If those things are still true, I think those have to be true for Agentforce or any agent to work effectively and produce the type of results you're looking for.
I mean, how can we top that as a final thought? So all we'll say is thank you, Brent. I appreciate your time you spent with us today. It flew by, and I think we could have a follow-up podcast in the future around some more of the Agentforce stuff. But I guess your note and take on it is obviously the risk is potentially higher if it has a more, if something were to go wrong in a client-facing sales cycle type of piece. So a bit more refinement, a bit more training for Jenny needs a bit more upskilling and training before she's let loose in the sales cycle, let's say.
I would agree with
give her
that.
access to actually do things instead of just regurgitate information.
Yeah. I think that's right. Baby steps.
Fantastic. All right, Brent. Well, thank you so much again. For our listeners, please do not forget to subscribe to learn more about CRM successes from companies like Pushpay and by leaders like Brent. Thanks all.